We are live.
Woohoo!
How's it going?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing well. So
Other than being sick.
yes, actually, did I say well? I meant awful. It's like, have you seen The Office where
Of
Jim
course I've
asks
seen
Kelly, how's everything with Ryan going? She said, awesome. I mean, awful.
it. Oh my
But
gosh.
this is not an Office podcast. I think the name is Sugarman Sync Up, but we could workshop that if that sounds too weird. Or if that's
It
not SEO friendly.
it is. It will work for right now. And there's so many names that I thought of because our last name is just really cool. But I feel like they end up sounding cheesy.
And I don't want it to sound like an inside joke either,
Yeah.
to where the public will not understand.
Yes, the public.
All of our many viewers.
Yes, all of them. You and me and everyone else.
Exactly. Well, I am very, very happy that we are finally doing this.
I
For a little
know.
while there, it seemed like it was not going to happen. But this is our first episode of a sibling, basically catch-up podcast that we're going to hope to do weekly, ideally. And the idea is that, well, first we're going to introduce ourselves and talk about why we're doing this. But the loose structure that we've had in mind at the moment is talk about some recent event. We'll each bring a recent event to the table and give our take on it. A global event, a world event, something in the news that's interesting. Maybe it's funny. Maybe it's something that we're interested in or we've done some digging on it. And we will then present that to the audience. And then that'll be the first segment. And then after that, we'll talk about some, life event that happened to us recently. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be just sort of the mundane day to day and kind of how we have dealt with that and share perhaps some advice, some insight. And then the last segment is maybe a little bit more of a double click. It could be called the double click. And that's where we get a little bit deeper into something related to the theme of the week. The theme of this week is new beginnings. And that structure, I think, is fluid. So that's what we have right now. It could change next week, but we are trying to land on something that we can do consistently and that we enjoy. Is that fair?
That sounds great. I love this structure. I love structure.
And this is your first podcast. Have you ever? So we'll get into kind of our background, but
Yeah,
you have a background in music.
I do.
Have you ever done a podcast or been on any sort of,
I
radio
have
program promoting
been
yourself?
I have been on a podcast before. Just like one time. There's a podcast called Live in the Studio. And it's my friend, well, I guess acquaintance, music friend in Towson. And I was on that. Tessa, our sister Tessa, was on that with me. That was like 6 years ago. So I haven't done anything recently. We used to do like radio interviews and stuff like that, but I have definitely never had my own podcast or regularly been on a podcast. And I also feel like podcasts they're not new, but like the idea of them being like just a main thing that a creator does, I feel like is kind of new. So I definitely haven't been in the new age of podcasting. So I'm excited.
Welcome to the new age.
Thank you. Have you been on a podcast before?
It's great to have you. No, I've recorded. That's a lie. I did. I have a podcast. I had a YouTube channel that I started during COVID,
Okay, right.
and I got maybe 12 views per video, and it was all about Manchester United, which is a soccer team that I am a
Still
tortured fan
obsessed.
of, obsessed with. But they, for the most part, they just make me very sad. Maybe Cecilia, you'd like to sort of share who we are, maybe talk a little bit about our family.
Yeah. So we probably haven't even said our names yet.
I'm Noah. I think the name is on the screen, so you could probably guess that, but that is my real name.
Noah Sugarman and Cecilia Sugarman. That's where the Sugarman sync up comes from. We are 2 of 5 siblings, and I'm going to just give you some of our FAQs. I don't know if you get these frequently asked questions a lot, but I do. Like, how many siblings do I have? There's 5 of us total. We are all full siblings, which is, I guess, kind of rare these days. Like, a lot of people have a lot of siblings, but like they're not necessarily like full siblings. We're all full siblings. Our parents have been married since 1987. So they were in it for the long haul, and they made 5 of us. Noah is the oldest, and I am the middle child. So there's one brother in between us, and then we have 2 younger sisters below me. So even though you're the oldest and I'm the middle, I still feel like the oldest sometimes because I'm the oldest girl, which is what I resonate with being the oldest a lot because I'm the oldest girl. So it's different experience for me being the oldest.
You're the oldest of a subcategory.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest overall.
I'm the youngest of the oldest, and I'm the oldest of the youngest. That's how I've always thought.
That is a fair point, though, because I think if you think of like a typical family of say 3, right? There's the oldest child who has oldest child syndrome.
Yes.
Then there's the middle child who has middle child syndrome, and then you have the baby who's a baby.
Yes.
Whereas with us, there's almost like there's 2 peaks, perhaps, and then 2 valleys.
Yeah.
So I was the oldest. Benzie's more of a middle child. Then Cecilia is almost like another oldest child.
Yes.
Tessa.
I would say Tessa and Benzie are both middle children. And even though I'm technically the middle because there's 2 above me and 2 below me, I still don't think I'm like the middle. Just the way that society, categorizes middle children. I do feel like Benzie and Tessa are more of like middle children. So, not in a bad way or anything.
Now our youngest sister is truly a baby.
No, she is the baby. I don't think she can
legally drink, but she is
not yet. She can in Canada. She's 21 in a week and a half.
That's right. I'm living in the future. Sorry.
So is she.
Okay, so that's a little bit about us.
Well, where do you live?
We'll obviously get into more. I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'll share a little bit more about kind of the journey to get here, maybe in the last segment, but we've been here for a year and a half.
Wow, has it been that long?
Ish. Yeah, just about. And it's great. We've lived, my wife and I, back up for a sec. I'm married to a wonderful Colombian woman and have a daughter. I will not say their names just for privacy reasons. There's all these adoring fans out there, and I just want to protect their privacy for now. However, we've moved around a bunch, and immediately before Atlanta, lived in Los Angeles, lived in Austin, Texas, Miami, Baltimore, Maryland.
You're global.
And yeah, global, national.
Well, to be sure, we've both / all of us have lived all over, and I think that is that in your last segment that you wrote out here, like kind of the journey. Yeah, we can get back to that, but we've all kind of lived everywhere. I mean, neither of our parents live where they've always or where they're from, and they haven't lived there for a very long time. Like our mom's from the Philippines, our dad's from Boston, and yet like our entire lives they've never lived there. So we've lived everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And I've sort of carried on that theme. In many ways, we both have. Oh, yeah. But I've taken it to an extreme. Yes. For many reasons, which we'll get into both today and over the course of the rest of our lives. Because this is a lifelong venture that we are
this podcast
now embarking on. Yes.
Oh, yes. Anyway, let's get to
why are we doing this? Segment. Why are we doing this? We are doing this podcast, number 1, for fame and fortune, but assuming that doesn't happen, just because the backup plan is it's a great way to just catch up, and we don't have this opportunity on a consistent basis. I think if you force yourself to do it and you put it on video and then you upload that video, then you sort of compel yourself to talk about interesting things. and perhaps be reflective and thoughtful about what's going on in the world and come up with stories for your own life, impart wisdom, and in so doing also think about your own actions and why you've taken them. And
Yeah, that's a great reason to have a podcast, I think. I mean, for anybody, but definitely for us. I mean, because we haven't lived in the same place in so long, it's like a little bit, and especially now that you're a dad, like it's a lot harder for us to catch up. And so I feel like it's really good for us to have like a scheduled time to catch up, but we might as well have fun with it. And
by the
like
way, hence the name Sugarman Sync Up.
I love it. That's great for right now.
I'm sick. I'm disgusting. So if a tissue appears every now and then, don't judge me.
It's okay.
Okay. So let's get into it. So, like I said, the first segment, for now, we'll call it What in the World. That's also a name that's being workshopped, but the point is
I
that we
like it.
each bring a recent topic that was in the news, just out there in the ether, and we give our read and our hot take. So I already have mine. Cecilia knows what it is. I do not know what hers is.
I
Like,
don't know anything about what you wrote though. So you can enlighten me because I saw it at first glance and I was like, I don't even know what this is. So might as well learn about it on air.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yours sounds more interesting than mine will. So go for it.
It is interesting because at some point in my life, I was watching a lot of Netflix documentaries, and I watched the Fyre Fest documentary
Oh yeah.
several years back. I think
Have
it
you
came
watched
out in
both of
maybe
them?
just the
Or
Netflix one.
there's a Hulu one too.
I didn't watch the Hulu one.
The Netflix one is better, but the Hulu one is if you're just interested in more of the lore, check out the Hulu one too.
Yeah. Well, this might be an inspiration to give it a rewatch. Because so recently there was what is being called the Vegan Fyre Fest. It happened in Queens, New York City. So it was a festival called VeganDale. And so this is actually, I'm reading directly from an article from The Independent. Quote, question mark, a vegan Fyre Fest? VeganDale visitors were left cranky and miserable after the festival struggled to keep up with tickets and resources. So there's this popular traveling food and music event, which was vegan themed, and it's a really big deal. So they have it across North America. It's expected to attract about 100,000 people across all of these locations just this year in North America. And there's widespread backlash because they were woefully unprepared for the festival that just happened in Queens. And
is that the first one?
No, not even the first one this year. So they've been doing this since I think 2018. And I'll get into a little bit of the lore in a sec, but basically it was very hot. Attendees paid $15 to get in, $90 for VIP access, and they were eager to sample vegan delicacies, listen to New York rapper Glorilla. I've not heard of her. However, it all kind of went out the window. Queen's graphic designer Rocco Marangeli said, "We were starving and cranky and miserable," he told the New York Times. I don't think they had the manpower to face the waves of vegans that were trying to crash those gates.
How many people were there?
Thousands and thousands, if you see the pictures. And maybe we'll figure out a way to put some of the pictures on top of this video for context. But Marangeli had to wait in line for over an hour before he gave up and went home, much like many other people. And to make matters worse, so it was 84-degree weather, and they were unable to find drinking water, and they ran out of toilet paper. So you can start to see the comparisons to Fyre Fest. And I guess in real time, people started to upload pictures of the food they were getting and of the crowds and of the fact that they couldn't get into the bathroom. And all of this is very Fyre Fest-esque. That's sort of how Fyre Fest became a thing. People were uploading pictures of there's this famous sandwich.
The cheese sandwich or something.
Yeah, the cheese sandwich. It's just bread and cheese. And they paid like $50
Thousands
for that or
dollars.
something crazy. And so those pictures started coming out, and then it went viral, and that's how that was sort of the downfall of
A
Firefest.
Firefest,
But
yeah.
some of these comments are amazing. So I scoured both X and Reddit. So for this first one, hashtag VeganDale is the most poorly organized festival I have ever seen. 90 minutes after the doors opened, thousands of people lined up outside. No one inside. Fuck this. I want a refund. Kevin Gill on X. The line to get in this morning was nearly an hour long with no organization. There were only 4 metal detectors, 3 of which were reserved for VIP ticket holders, so not safe at all. And they made you dump out your water. So they did not have water refill stations. So you had to purchase water, which was $4 for a 16-ounce bottle from
That doesn't
official
sound like
VeganDale
very
bars.
vegan.
No,
I feel like vegans are at least a lot of vegans, and I don't know about all of them, but they try to do things that are more like eco-friendly, and having to buy water instead of just like refilling your water, that just does not sound very green.
exactly. Especially if you are purchasing a bottle versus bringing
Yeah.
your own bottle. So I did a little bit of digging, and this one went viral and made the news. But their previous event in Chicago also made local Chicago news. And apparently, it was a lot of the same stuff. They had too many people, not enough manpower to properly run it. There were arbitrarily enforced rules. The cashless wristbands weren't working. Vendors still haven't been paid. It's a clusterfuck,
Yeah.
quite frankly. Um, and so this has been going on for several years. The founder, his name is, get this, Hellenic Vincent DePaul. He is a Sri Lankan refugee, and he owns a number of vegan businesses in the Parkdale neighborhood of Toronto. So it's Parkdale and colloquially known as VeganDale. And so he basically
Oh.
took that concept, right? And he owns these businesses there and sort of scaled it to like a festival concept all over North America. And I guess that these used to be well run events, but perhaps they've just gotten a little bit too big and now they're basically falling apart. So unlike Firefest, I don't think this is an outright scam, but it obviously there's elements of it that have turned into a bit of a cash grab. Um,
I feel
and
like with all the festivals that they constantly have in the States, at the very least, like every weekend you hear of like food truck festival, like there's a concert or a music festival, especially in the summer or like the good weather months, like every single weekend. Like, how do they not have that figured out?
well, I can tell you, I think a lot of food truck festivals, depending on what the theme is, it might be a lot smaller scale, right? And maybe the logistics isn't as big of a deal. But I've also been to, I had a phase in my life where I was going to music festivals,
Yeah.
and many of them, even the ones that are well planned, border on chaos, right?
Yeah.
Like you could very easily see how things could go south. Like there could
Yeah.
easily be stampedes and people
I
run
don't
out
really
of.
go to festivals for this exact reason. I mean,
I mean, I don't
I
either
go
anymore.
sometimes. Like, there's a festival I'm going to next weekend, but I'm only going for like the second half of the last day because there's only so much that I can take. And also, people are paying like hundreds of dollars, like you're saying, like $90 for VIP. That's not that bad, but like a lot of these types of music festivals, food festivals, people pay good money just for what?
Oh, right.
So you want to make sure your experience is quality, and if they don't have like proper restrooms and water, I feel like that's just the ultimate fail. Like, but if the whole if the whole festival is about food, then water and toilets are definitely just as important as the food.
I think Coachella is probably a good example of one that's iconic and is probably planned pretty well. But the ticket prices
I've heard
there
bad
are.
things though in terms of like bathroom lines and stuff.
Mhm,
But it's like that's just to be expected. If you're gonna go to a festival, it's like some people literally wear diapers.
that's outrageous.
Especially if they want to be upfront at an artist that they love and they go early and they wait for hours. They will literally wear diapers.
So think about that next time you know that you're going to be in a crowded festival, and just consider what people around you are wearing. Are they wearing diapers? Do you want to be around a bunch of adults wearing diapers?
Well, you will be one day probably. So
yeah, well, we're hopefully not at that stage yet.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, for me, one of the key takeaways is oftentimes the line between poor planning and fraud, which is what Firefest was, is thinner than you might imagine. And I remember watching Firefest, and I thought, if he just made a couple of not stupid decisions at a few key points, he may have gotten away with this, right? Like if they didn't have to switch islands, I think they had to switch islands up front, and that just made the logistics that much more of a headache. And if he just, maybe delayed it a little bit and didn't feel the need to charge outrageous amounts of money for stuff that didn't exist yet, it might have worked. And I don't think that he went into it thinking, I'm going to pull the wool over thousands of people's eyes and steal their money.
And they had no reason to believe that he would do that either, because it really did not seem like a scam, especially, like I said, with all the festivals that there are in this world, in this country, but also in this world, especially the types of things that all those influencers and celebrities had the opportunity to go to. They had no reason to believe that it would be a scam. So that's where the Fyre Festival always freaked me out a little bit. It was just like, was it a scam, or was it just poor planning, like you're saying?
That's
it ended up turning into a scam because they didn't get their money back. Is that
right? Well, and so there's elements of that going on here, where vendors out of the Chicago venue haven't been paid yet, and I think that's still in process. And city officials have been contacted both in Chicago and in New York. But I would imagine that this is going to be the last year that this stuff happens, or they're going to have to clean up their act somehow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds fun though. Like I actually kind of like vegan food. Some of it's like really good, and I've actually considered being vegan before.
I was a vegan for about 6 hours one day.
What, you just were like not able to eat? Is that what it was?
Well, we went to Whole Foods to just go to the vegan aisle, and everything was 3 times as expensive.
Yeah, but sometimes meat. If I think about meat too much, I'm just like, I don't. Or I guess the acute animal that will. Oh, that leads me into my topic. By the way,
Let's hear it.
My 2 things that I was going to talk about, 3 things, are not nearly as researched as yours. I'm embarrassed. I need to do better research next time. But I honestly have like a hard time finding topics that aren't political, and I don't want to talk about politics on this podcast. But
that's not our goal.
There's not that many things happening right now, I guess. Like, all politics overshadow everything else right now. But the things that I found. Number 1, like I said, cute animals. There is a new baby hippo that was just born at a zoo in Thailand, and it's so cute.
Well, we have to put the video of it here, right?
I think
somehow.
Can we do it? Can we add it later? Because I have a video, but I don't know how to add that.
We'll figure it out.
Oh, there's a present button.
We'll fix it in post.
Look, there's a present button. Maybe I can try that. Okay, here we go. Can you see this?
Means bouncy pig in Thai. Now, at just 2 months old, she's already winning the internet's heart, and you can see why. Oh, so cute. The adorable and spunky creature has been catapulted to social media stardom since her keepers began uploading snippets of her life online. The zoo she calls home, located in Bangkok, has reported a 30% increase in visitors, a spike they attribute to her natural cuteness.
Okay. Well, that was it.
Do you remember Fiona? I think she was at the Cincinnati Zoo, but I followed her growth development
Is that also a
religiously.
hippo?
Yeah,
I
it's
don't remember that. But
years old. I can't remember exactly when it happened, but
well, she's so cute. Her name is Moo Dang, and like you were saying, we're gonna talk about global topics. That she was born in Thailand, and I definitely want to follow her journey now. But she was just born. But yeah, when I see cute baby animals, that's one of the things that makes me want to go vegan, or at the very least, pescatarian, because I don't know. I'm not as concerned about fishing and eating fish, but when I think about
right,
animals and farms,
smaller brains.
yeah, it's just no, it's not about the small brains, but whatever. That was my first thing I was going to talk about. And it's not really anything to talk about, more something to show, just cuteness.
Well,
And the
before you
second,
move on, so have you been vegan or vegetarian before?
no, but I used to not eat meat 3 days before I had a show. Like I used to be very meticulous about my diet and when it came to singing. And so I would not eat meat or dairy for 3 days leading up to any show. And I had a lot of shows, so sometimes I would go like a couple weeks without eating meat and dairy, which was really hard. But it was never because of like any moral reason, but more so now. I feel like I would. It's not moral reason, more so just like I can't think of eating an animal. It's so sad, but I still eat meat. It's just hard sometimes.
You know what it is? I think this is a baseless assumption, so this is not a well-researched opinion, but I'm sure once animals in Disney movies started talking, and we figured that
Vegan
they
went up.
yes,
Okay, animals
and
have been
we
talking
assumed
in movies for a long time, though. Like,
true,
at least as long as movies have been around, I feel.
but the more realistic the animals got in the movies, and the more intricate their journey
Okay,
became,
but there are some movies where the animal character is really annoying or rude or mean, or is the
and so
villain.
you would eat the animal in that
No,
case if they're rude.
if they're the bunny from Secret Life of Pets. I'm just
You would
kidding.
eat him,
I'm just kidding.
Kevin Hart.
You know what I'm talking about? Oh my gosh, I hate that bunny. But I love that movie.
I've never had rabbit.
I don't think I
Is that a
have
French
either.
delicacy, or is that just
I
what
don't
you eat
know.
when you're in the wilderness?
I feel like it sounds like something they would eat down south. And you're the one who lives in Georgia, so
I mean, it's a lot of comfort food down here. So if you had rabbit, it'd be fried and refried and
ugh.
put in
All
a.
right, all right, all right. I don't know how we went from talking about being vegan to talking about frying bunnies. Okay.
Would you eat Zazu?
Who
Zazu,
from
the Lion
like
King.
the light? No. If we personify the animals, like the less that I want, like when I see people with like on farms and they name the cows and stuff, and then I'm like, is that a cow you're keeping forever, or is that a cow you're gonna be friends with and then eat? Because I don't
Do you
know.
know people with farms that have named animals?
I feel like a lot of people that live on farms name the animals, but they're also like they use a lot of the times those cows are for like milking.
Yeah. Well, people on farms have a much different view of animals. Like I when I worked at the bank where I started my career at, there was this guy named Jonathan who grew up in Iowa on a farm, and they wouldn't let the dogs in the house. Like they had sheep dogs that were work animals, and they would
Yeah,
live outside, and
yeah.
they weren't house pets.
I had a friend
So they had
back in
that
high school who
separation.
had that too. They had puppies and like they were just gonna let the puppies roam. And my dog Sushi is from a farm too, and farm animals are just or farm dogs are just another breed. But speaking of which, we just got the wisdom panel to test out what she is because she literally came from a farm. And she is just a random dog that is extremely unique. And so we're finally going to find out what she is. But I also want to talk about my other
That's
topic.
the pet version of 23andMe.
Yes. So the other thing I was going to say was, did you hear about the 8-year-old girl who stole her parents' car and drove herself to Target?
I might have heard about this.
Yeah, this
But go
happened the
on.
other day. This little girl in Ohio, 8. She's 8 years old. She stole her parents' car and drove 13 miles to Target and went inside and spent $400, including on like a Starbucks. You know, they have Starbucks at the front of Target. And her parents were reported her and the car missing, and they didn't expect that she was the one who took the car.
But she's okay.
She's okay.
Yeah.
The
well,
car
she's
was
probably
also okay
she's probably grounded.
forever. It's just
So presumably she has done that so many times with her mom that she just assumed that this is
Hey, kids really pay
is how
attention
it
to
goes.
everything that you do. I mean, I'm sure you know, having a child, that she probably knows a lot more about your routines and the things that you do than, I mean, I'm sure you realize now, but like, just kids pay attention to everything. And she probably noticed, okay, wait, I want to drive one day. So this is what I have to do. I put the key in the ignition, I turn it, and you pull this down, and then you just drive. You stop at the red lights. Doesn't seem like it's that hard.
That's crazy.
But everyone's saying, like, how did she
no
even
accidents?
reach the gas? She swerved a lot. I think there's actually footage of her swerving.
Was she big? Like a big 8-year-old?
I don't know. There
Not
are
all
big
8-year-olds are
8-year-olds.
created equal.
There are big 8-year-olds. I wouldn't know. I'm in the 3rd percentile of. I was in the 3rd percentile.
There's 13-year-olds that look like full-grown adults and they play football, and it looks like they're ready to get recruited for the NFL.
Actually, there is a girl
Have you seen
who.
Derrick Henry?
No.
Running back for the Ravens.
Oh.
Anyway.
Okay, well, those were my 2 main topics. I did have one other, which was just about Post Malone. We texted about this the other day, that Post Malone is like taking over country music all of a sudden, which I just find so fascinating because Post Malone has transcended genres and landed on not just even like subtly country, like bringing acoustic guitars into his music or anything, is a full-blown, not just a country singer, but like country bumpkin. And I mean that in the best way because I love his new album. And
It's so good.
The features on it are incredible. Like, who has Dolly Parton, Chris Stapleton, Jelly Roll, all of them as Brad Paisley, who else? Blake Shelton, is Tim McGraw on there? Yeah, as his first country album. Just, I feel like it says more about him as a person and as an artist than anything.
I agree. It's so good. And actually, I was doing some. So I've always loved Post Malone.
Me too.
And I remember seeing a lot of videos of him. There's so many videos of him just walking around, meeting random people and just singing with them and playing the guitar in a field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at videos of him before this album came out, and he's basically incorporated country music into his concert. I've never been to a Post Malone concert, but I know before this album came out, he had, some sort of tribute to Toby Keith that he played. What's that song? I'm Not As Good As I Once Was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he played that. And then he also did the America the Beautiful at the Super Bowl.
Oh, yes.
This past year.
Oh, my gosh.
Acoustic guitar.
Well, I feel like that was already when he had already started dipping his toes
Recording
into
it,
the country genre. And who knows if this album had already been in the works. But like his last album was no longer rap. It was pop album, but with all these acoustic elements. And if you go back into a lot of the beginnings of Post Malone, like he did what I do, which is these live music shows, cover shows at bars and restaurants. That's how he started out. and I'm sure he did country and pop back then and then turned into a rapper.
Yeah.
He's just so talented in that way that he, like I said, transcended all these genres. I actually
He's
saw
a
him
true
open for
musician.
Justin Bieber.
So you have seen him.
Yeah, but this was in 2016, and he only had that song. Justin Bieber and Post Malone had a song together. I can't remember what it was called. It was a good one. This was back in like 2016, and so it's just crazy that like he was opening for Justin Bieber and just had like, maybe he had Congratulations, but I don't think he even had Congratulations yet. And it's just crazy, like almost 10 years later, like how different he is now, but how big he still is. And I had a friend who just went to his concert the other day, and I was like, did he play any of his other genres of songs? And she said that he did all of his bigger songs, but as country songs. Like he did, he made country renditions of his bigger songs, like Congratulations and all that stuff.
I wonder if that is because the audience that's going to his shows right now, he wants to cater to that, and it's probably a different type of audience than will go to his old shows.
But how can you? What I think is, it's like if that audience is country fans now, then over the last like few months, he had to build up an entirely new fan base, and to sell out a national tour of just country fans. Like I feel like it's got to be mostly Post Malone fans that will accept him. Will accept him at any genre.
Yeah.
But then again, I do think country is so big right now and everyone loves it. In fact, even Ian, my boyfriend, to all those who don't know who Ian is, he recently loves country music and almost exclusively listens to country music. He was one of those people that said like, yes, he was one of those people that would say like, oh, I like all music except country. And I used to be the type to be like, well, why don't you just give country a shot? Even though I'm not even like a big country fan or anything. It's more so like, I don't understand when people are like, I hate country. It's like, it's just another genre. Like if you're a music lover, you'll see like the beauty in all the different genres. I just find it interesting how big country is right now. People are like, oh, wait a second. This is wholesome. And this is like kind of cool. And there's a lot of talent in country music.
It could it could be sort of a coming of age experience for many people. I think the messages that come out of country songs, when I think of country music, the messaging tends to be stuff that you can relate to if you've seen some shit, right? Like you've gone through heartbreaks or family deaths, or you're a homeowner and you've lost your home or your truck or whatever, like, or you've come home from a long day at work and you just need a beer to just take the edge off, and that tends to happen at a certain age, right? Or a certain
okay, I see what you're saying. Yes.
And so maybe more people that you've grown up with are just coming around to that because now they're just older.
That's true.
I have a question for you on the same topic. So did you listen to Beyonce's country album?
Actually, I was going to get to that too. I did listen to it. I think it's an amazing album, and I have never even been a Beyonce fan. Not that I don't like her, but it's just like when it comes to hip hop, it's in R&B, it's not really my typical thing I listen to. Like I don't have anything against hip hop and R&B, but I just don't typically listen to that. I see Beyonce's country album as more of like a pop album with country elements.
Right.
I don't think she full on went country like Post Malone did. I think that she just isn't R&B in this hip hop or R&B, but I think it's still pop to me. So,
right. And I haven't listened to it. I've just listened to the main one that obviously
I think it's good music.
Made the rounds.
Beyonce's country album is good music. It has amazing writers and features in a similar way that Post Malone's album does, but Post Malone really went country. Right. But I think
it's very obvious that he has a deep reverence for the genre and for the artists.
Yes.
And
You could put anyone in front of a microphone and be like, sing this song, and it wouldn't necessarily work. But for him, it's like he was meant to do this.
yeah.
So I don't know if I would say the same thing about Beyonce, but I still think it's a good album. And I think that she did a great job I would say, if anything, like dipping her toes more into it, because I don't think it's a country album. I think it has elements of country, but it's still like a pop album.
Well, unfortunately, the timing's not going to work out for you to come to the show in Atlanta. Plus, the tickets are so expensive. I think the cheapest tickets are maybe $150. Back to the point about how expensive concerts and festivals are these days.
I don't think that's that bad. Depends on where your seats are, though, because if you're paying $150
It's
for the
not good seats.
nosebleeds,
It's like
then
that's like general admission.
oof. I definitely would love to see him again one day, but I mean, like I said, I saw him in 2016. But
I wonder who he'd bring.
me,
You know?
who I'd
No,
bring?
no. Who he'd bring out on stage?
Oh, yeah. I always think about that. Like,
It wouldn't be everybody.
Right? How do these artists that have all these features on their albums tour without all of those features? Because he can't bring Dolly Parton and Tim McGraw and Blake Shelton and Jelly Roll, all of those in his tour bus. But that would be
Right.
pretty cool.
Dolly Parton has her own bus. Okay.
We should probably move into our next segment.
Let's go into the next segment. Yes. We've
taking
definitely
up
gone
time
over,
here.
but that's okay. We're just flowing right now.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So our next segment is called Life Hacking. And essentially we take turns talking about some recent life event and give our quick insight and advice. So just because we took so much time on that first segment, this is not even that big of a deal. However, I will share some insight to what happened to me recently. So over Labor Day, we took a family vacation with our parents too, actually, to Charleston. First time visiting Charleston. Beautiful city, by the way.
I love it there.
Yeah, that was my first time. I would say it's like Philadelphia and Miami had a baby. You know, there's lots of sort of historic British and French style buildings, but they're all in pastel colors, right? And there's palm trees everywhere. So it's just this very weird intersection of like the sort of tropical, almost feels like South Florida, but then there's like these old historic buildings that you'd get in like Boston or Philadelphia. And
That's a
they're
great
all
way to
just
put it. I've never thought about it that way.
yeah, and there's like the cobblestone streets. It was wonderful. And we listened to Post Malone's new album as we gathered there.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So, as you know, our dad is basically a professional vacationer, and it's just really, really good at having structured, orderly vacation plans for whenever we go on vacation.
Yes. That's
so
a great way to describe him.
I wanted to take a page out of his book this time. Not necessarily in what he's done before, because this was rather unique, but I wanted to sort of take charge and plan it. So I did plan an itinerary. It was a flexible itinerary, basically for different time slots throughout this weekend. I said, here's what we could do. Let's be in this area of the city, probably, but if not, we could go over here. And here's all these activities that'll be open, and here's how much they cost. And I put it in a Word doc and shared it with him. And so I didn't have like hard deadlines and hard like, hey, we need to do this at this time, but just ideas so that we knew what was available. One thing I did do though is I made a bunch of reservations for every meal. So for every meal, I made reservations at least 3 or 4 different restaurants because Labor Day weekend. And I was right. I mean, I'd never been there before, but I figured it would just be an absolute clusterfuck zoo, which it was. There's so many people. I want to go back when it's not as hot and
not a holiday weekend.
Not a holiday weekend when there's not as many people there, because it was sometimes difficult to move around.
Wow.
But that making reservations everywhere was such a game changer, because especially if you don't know what you're going to be doing throughout the day. So maybe you're going to be in, one part of the city or another. it helps to have a reservation there, so you can just walk into the restaurant and sit down, which we did on more than one occasion. And so the one caveat is that you have to make sure it's places that don't charge your card up front.
Did
But
you cancel your reservations, or did you just not show
for sure, no, I canceled them once we know where we were going. But it was a total game changer for a vacation. And if we didn't have those reservations, we either wouldn't have gotten a table or we would have to wait, at least an hour for some spots. And when you have a baby and you're in the sun,
larger party,
and it's like 90 degrees and you're just miserable, like it just makes such a difference in your day. And I got this idea. So when I used to live in Austin, Texas, and there was a time during COVID where I couldn't get a reservation anywhere. Like I would literally call up 15 different places on a Friday night, and everything was booked, and we would just have to just do takeout or something cheap and eat at home. And this happened every single weekend. One, that's because a lot of restaurants were shut down or in COVID protocols. Two, there's too many people living in Austin, Texas. But one of my buddies at the job that I had when I was there said that his wife would just make reservations in advance everywhere, and then she'd just cancel the stuff that she didn't end up using. But that way she would have stuff in advance. I was
That's a really good idea.
I was annoyed by it at the time. I'm like, wait a second. So there's just like dozens of people like your wife who just have reservations everywhere, and that's why I can't get a table.
It's like the ticket. What is it called? Not scouting. Ticket. Not scamming. When people buy a bunch of concert tickets and sell them.
It's what's that called?
It starts with a sk sound. But you know what I mean. It's obviously not that, because I know that there are people who buy reservations and then sell them. I don't know how that works, but
in this case, I wasn't in it to get a profit. I just
wanted to eat.
I just want to sit down somewhere, and also I didn't know what the day was gonna shape up like.
Right.
Especially if you're with family. For anybody who's ever been vacationing with family, it's hard enough if it's just you and your wife, or you and your significant other, to plan, here's what we're going to do. Now, it's times 2 harder to do that if there's another couple. So if it's with my parents, then they have their own idea. And you just keep adding on more family members. And
don't forget allergies.
Right, allergies.
Because you were with a gluten person, and I'm the gluten person.
So
now we've got our dairy person. Ian can't eat dairy, so it's a lot of layers.
Exactly. So that's my life lesson for you.
Thank you. I definitely need to do that actually where I live, because I live in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, which is a tourist town. So in the summer, you cannot eat anywhere if you don't have a reservation. So in the summer, I probably should just make a bunch of reservations ahead of time for just where I live, because it's always a madhouse on the weekends. So for me, my big thing is that I turned 30 a week ago. As you can see, my 1994 necklace weight.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I already said it before, but again.
Yeah, it's a big deal, I feel. I don't know. I obviously don't have any life lessons yet. It's only been a week, but I don't know. I feel like it's a big change, and I'm kind of grappling with that, like being in a new decade. Like this is the beginning. Like you said, this episode theme is new beginnings. I feel like turning 30 is kind of the perfect example of that, because it's just like a whole new world now. I feel like people are gonna think of me differently when I tell them how old I am, and like I'm gonna see people differently in my age versus their ages.
It's not that different.
Okay. Well,
didn't you just wake up and think, oh, this is actually just another day?
I mean, kind of, but I also I really feel like I'm 30. Like
in a good way.
Yeah, like I
feel
like
old.
I was ready to let my 20s go. I've just been in a different era for a little bit now. So like I stopped drinking about a year ago. Well, it was
By the way,
last.
this can segue into your double click, basically. I think that's what we're doing right now in real time. So
Okay.
feel free to just go with the
Um.
flow.
Wait, real quick. Can you hear Ian talking? Because he's talking in the other room.
No,
Just
we're good.
okay. Cool. Yeah. There's a lot of like things in life right now where I'm just kind of like, wow, I'm 30 and this is happening all at the same time. Like, I stopped drinking last November. So just everything is just different from the perspective of being like the sober person or a sober person. And in addition, like I'm going into this new decade of my life and just new age, whether it was 29 or 30, it's a whole new year for me to see things differently. Like I just went to 2 different weddings, but the wedding I went to this past weekend in San Diego, all the more like there were only a few people there who weren't drinking, one of
No.
which was pregnant, and then one of which was another guy who decided to stop drinking. But
Did you play music there?
no, it was our friends, Amy and Joe just got married. It was a great time, amazing wedding and everything, but sometimes I just not when I don't drink, it feels like strange to like be in a room with people who are all drunk and or drinking, and I'm like, wait, should I be drinking? Like I don't drink on a regular basis. Like when I'm at home and choose not to like participate in the nightlife around here, that's one thing. But like special occasions where everyone is like the drinking is part of the celebrating, and I'm the one that's just like over here, like I'm a loser or I'm a bitch. You know what I mean? Like I feel guilty not drinking. It's just an odd feeling. But then like most of the people in the room were older than me. So that's also another thing where it's like I'm thinking of myself as like turned this new older age. I'm 30, I'm in a new decade, but then most of the people at the wedding are already in their 30s, but I'm the one not drinking. It's not to compare myself to them, but just from my own perspective of being like, okay, now I'm 30. I put my drinking days behind me in my 20s and all that, and then to go into events like weddings or just like big drinking events where everyone the purpose of being there is to celebrate, and drinking is part of that. So it's just an odd feeling, especially being 30 now.
So how do you remedy that when you're in those moments? Like,
I mean,
is it just simple tactical stuff like carrying a glass that's full of sparkling water so it looks like you are, and
no,
sort of
because I genuinely don't care if people think I'm drinking or not. I am happy to say I don't drink, and I am trying to just be myself and also just like still have fun, because sometimes I just don't really have fun in social situations, and I don't think it's because of drinking, but more so just like I'm just a little bit more of a shut-in these days, so I'm just like I'm trying so hard to be social. But it got better. The night got better as the music got better. People were really like letting loose, and so I feel like when everyone else around me is letting loose, like I can feel like I can let loose too, because like nobody cares,
yeah.
you know. But yeah, it's definitely harder to be in big events where everyone's drinking and I'm not.
Well, I certainly don't blame you for being more of a shut-in if you're not drinking, because I hate being around people who are drunk if I'm sober. I cannot stand them. The only way is to just, go with the flow and be one of them, right? You
It's
just
kind of like zombies. Like if you
yeah,
pretend you're a zombie, then they won't kill you. I'm just kidding. I don't
there you
have
go.
anything against drunk people. I think, I don't have anything against drinking. I truly don't judge anybody who is doing that. And I don't want to come across like I'm like, oh, well, I'm better than you because I don't drink. Or I just truly hope I never come across that way, because it's really just a personal thing. But it's just an odd experience. It's almost like you're in a dream. because it's like everyone is experiencing something together and acting a certain way, feeling a certain way, and I'm not part of that at all. And like I know what it feels like though, because I used to drink and I used to party and I feel like I have more fun. I don't know if I've become like boring and not fun, but I just don't really see the appeal in drinking anymore. So it's just I don't know.
And the goal is that this is how you're going to be from here on out.
I mean, for right now, it's what I'm embracing. It originally started with just I don't really the nightlife where I live is not really my vibe. And I just was like, maybe it's me. Maybe I need to stop drinking and that will kind of change how I feel about it. But now it's been almost a year and I still don't love it. So yeah, I don't know. I this is where I live and definitely when I'm around here, I have no regrets not drinking. When I'm in other cities and towns, like when I went out with you in Atlanta, or like when I've been in Florida and I was in California, like it makes me think like, oh, like I'm not the same person here. I feel. I don't know. I feel like I feel more myself when I'm not in my own town. So I feel like I would be more inclined to drink at a wedding that's not in my town or something like that. But for right now, I'm just still like I don't drink and I don't want to participate. So we'll see where it goes. Like, for example, Ian's friend doesn't drink anymore, but he's planning to drink on his bachelor party next year. And I don't see the problem with that. Like, but it's not like I don't drink because like I had like a drinking problem. It was just a choice. And I'm not saying that person does either, but for people like me or him who just make a choice, like, I don't want to drink anymore, I want to see what happens. I feel like we kind of make the rules. So if I wanted to, I could start drinking casually, but I haven't done it yet.
Right. And maybe it wouldn't feel like a defeat in the same way where if you had a problem at some point and then you gave in because you couldn't control yourself.
Right.
Like you wouldn't felt like you'd broken a rule necessarily. Maybe you would.
I mean, sometimes I haven't fully not drank. Like there were a couple of times when I had the opportunity to have like a gluten-free beer. And before I stopped drinking, I really just fell in love with gluten-free beer. I just love the taste of it. It's not because I want to get drunk, but because I grew up or like earlier in my 20s didn't have gluten-free beer because it wasn't a thing. And now there's gluten-free beer everywhere. And so I went for it for a little bit, but I just got such big headaches. So I was just like, what's the point of having one or two here and there where it's just going to give me a headache anyway?
And that's a good point. So the when you did drink, that would make you feel sick, like you would have headaches.
Not sick, but headaches. I have like chronic headaches, and drinking just made them worse. So if anything, like one of the things that stops me from drinking anytime I feel like a little bit of an urge is like, oh my gosh, I know how bad my head will feel, and I cannot do that to myself. Like it's one thing if I have a headache from like not knowing why, but if I cause myself an issue, I would just be so mad at myself. So yeah.
Especially if you then have to get on stage the next day in front of people. I can't even imagine. I mean, if I knew that drinking would give me headaches, it would also give me pause whether I would want to continue doing this or not.
Yeah.
So,
but the thing is that like when I stopped drinking, it's not like my headache stopped. I found out recently that I have a bad sinus infection and I don't know how long I've had it, but like my headaches went away when I started taking the antibiotic for it. So it could just be like I have a sinus infection, but I've like never
have you been to the doctor?
Yeah, I went 2 weeks ago, and that's
you have a primary care physician?
No. That's one thing about where I live is that it's really hard to find like a primary care doctor around here that's just like works for you because this area is mainly for retired people, and so I feel like a lot of the care around here is specifically geared towards like seniors and
end of life planning.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but there's just not as much care around here for people my age.
They do have
I
a
mean,
lot of them in Atlanta. Just throwing it out there, but that's also true of basically everywhere else.
everywhere else. Yes.
Yes.
We don't have much here. We don't have Target. We don't have Trader Joe's. We don't have Whole Foods. We don't have doctors. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we don't have around here, but doctors is definitely a big. I mean, there are doctors,
That's a
but
big one.
or even dentists. Like it took me a year to get into my dentist. Over a year when I got on my new insurance around here. I called to make a dentist appointment right away, and they didn't have an appointment for over a year. So it's just kind of like it's a very well known thing. Anyway, I have gone into so many rants here. What is your double click before we wrap up here?
Okay, so I'll be very quick with this just because we have gone on very long, which is a good thing. I think we've basically proven to ourselves that talking for this amount of time is not an issue at all. In fact, the challenge will be to rein it in and to be more focused on a topic, which is a good problem to have. That's a high class problem.
I will say
Yeah.
that whenever you and I talk and like we, when we just randomly have a catch up, I feel like we always have really good conversations. So we always just like have really good things to talk about. But it's definitely even better when we do the research before we have the conversation. So I feel like the options are endless here. And like you said, this is the beginning. We could be doing this forever.
Right. That's my hope. So my double click is, and this is very, very quick. It's actually probably pretty stupid. Anyway, we live in Atlanta now, and I'll just share. We touched on the fact that growing up, we moved around a bunch. So I was born in New York City, Manhattan, and from there we moved to Newark, New Jersey, and then from there we moved to.
No, we moved. Okay, yeah.
Then we moved to Germantown, Maryland, and that's where you were born.
I was born in Rockville.
So at that point, it was in Maryland. At that point, it was you, Benzie, me, and then from Maryland, we moved to New Jersey again.
Dang, I never thought about the fact that you had lived in New Jersey before Maryland. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And then we moved from New Jersey, we moved to El Dorado Hills, California.
Sacramento.
Which is It's a suburb of Sacramento. But then from there, we moved to Elk Grove, another suburb of Sacramento. And then from there, we moved to another suburb of Sacramento.
Carmichael.
And then from there, we moved back to the East Coast to Baltimore. And that's where I met my wife and went to school. And then had my first job. And then after that, moved to Miami.
Don't forget that moving to Baltimore, like you just mentioned, the 3 different towns we lived in Sacramento area, moving to Baltimore. I mean, I know you didn't live at every place that we lived, but you also moved around a lot too. Like
I think I moved maybe 4 or 5 times in Baltimore,
which is total. I think more common. But like we first moved to the Baltimore. It was actually like Baltimore city lines, and then we moved into Towson, and then we moved to Parkville, and then Towson. It's like. We just as a family have moved so many times, and then you have moved and I have moved a lot. Tessa has moved a lot.
And then I moved to Miami, and then to Austin, Texas, and then to Los Angeles, and now to Atlanta. And so there is this constant theme of new beginnings. Yes. Even when you're moving inside in a intercity, there's a new beginning moving into a new house or a new apartment. And I lost count of how many times I just said, but it was more than 15 times. And every time is a new beginning, and it's exciting, right? You move to a new city, you don't know anybody or anything about it. And that sort of ambiguity is exciting. I find it very, very exciting. And the downside to that is sort of once you've passed that initial kind of excitement and everything feels so new, there's this tendency that things can get boring. And you're like, all right, well, what's the next thing from here? For me,
I'm exactly the same way.
Yeah, and that's the function of our upbringing.
I think it's partly our upbringing and partly, we've talked about this before, like it's actually a symptom of ADHD. Let me find this Facebook post that I shared the other day.
Well, while you're finding that, yeah, it's been a function of our upbringing. Potentially, it's also ADHD, but
here it is.
Go ahead.
It looks like this. It's this girl like having these cycles. It's like, I love routine until I'm bored. Then I love excitement until I'm overwhelmed. Then I love routine. And it just keeps going around like that. And I know that's probably more so talking about the day-to-day things, but for me, it is definitely a factor when it comes to moving, because I know I haven't lived in Miami or Austin, but I moved from Baltimore to LA, and then from LA back to Baltimore, and then from Baltimore I lived in White Marsh, and then I moved to Baltimore City, and then I moved here to Rehoboth. And it's just, it's not like I'm bored now, but I have lived here for 3 years, and I would be ready to move. But it's just a lot of factors when it comes to that. Like, we own our house here. I have a career here.
Rates are changing, and who knows what the future holds.
Who knows what the future holds? But the thing is that, I guess the point is that there's always that, whoop, I guess it feels like it's time to move. Have you gotten that yet?
We have, although, so Laura's definitely different. Like, she wants a level of permanence, which I want to give her. And also, once you have a kid, you know, there have been benefits to having this ability to just pack up at the drop of a hat. You know, I know of many people who they couldn't fathom ever leaving their hometown. And that's just such a limiting belief or limiting factor for their life, because there's so many opportunities. If you can, even just for jobs, if you can turn on the LinkedIn app and nationally have all of those job options open to you, of course, it's going to be a huge differentiating factor for your career versus narrowing it down to just your small town or even the city that you live in. So that's one thing.
But
with that being said,
some people want that for their whole lives. Like, I think of families like who were born and raised there. Their parents were born and raised there. Their grandparents were born and raised there, you know, and in that they have like, they're easily able to have like Thanksgiving, for example, where all the generations come over the house and they're used to doing things together, going to the pool every day in the summer with their cousins and things like that. Like, that's not something that we have ever experienced. And like, having our, you know, like having like your kids don't have their cousins nearby. Like, Benzie's kids don't have their cousins nearby. Like, we never lived near our cousins either. So, or I guess the closest was when we lived in Maryland and we lived closer to Eddie and Danny. But like, none of us have ever planted our roots anywhere.
Yeah. Well, so that leads me to basically what my point is, which is there's new beginnings can mean many things. And so it can mean just moving to a different place, but it could also mean setting a new paradigm for yourself. And so in this case, what my wife and I have decided to do is have this be our permanent home, and basically a beachhead where everybody, ideally from the whole family, can now join us here. I wish I had known what it's like to go to a school and be like, oh, there goes Bobby. I knew him when he was in kindergarten, and now here he is, and we're both playing on the football team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy how a lot of people experience that, but I don't regret the childhood that we had in a lot of ways. I mean, there's lots of things that have happened that maybe should have gone differently, but at the same time, it made us who we are, and we've experienced so much more of life than a lot of people have. And I find that despite the fact that, something I didn't mention about us is that we were homeschooled. Like, despite the fact that we were homeschooled, we have experienced so much. We were able to travel, go to the Philippines as kids, like do our schoolwork, traveling in the Philippines. Like, you went to Rome. There were so many things that we, as homeschooled kids that moved around a lot, got to experience that a lot of people are like, whoa, what is that like? What was it? What's
I
it
mean,
like
there's
to go to the
kids who go to
Philippines?
nice private schools and they get to go to Rome too.
That's true, but I would say the majority of people who, just your average middle class family don't necessarily,
That's
or
fair.
a lot of people that I have met living here in Rehoboth haven't really left Delaware that much, or if they haven't gone to that many places or had the opportunity to. Like, no shade to anybody, but I do feel like there's a little bit of like a sheltered aspect to this small town that I live in. And I feel like I always felt like I was a sheltered one, but I don't feel like, because of our experiences that we've had, like I feel like I'm the one who's not sheltered compared to a lot of people that I have met.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to know, like, yes, that they have their aunts and uncles and their grandparents and their cousins nearby. And that's definitely something that I wish that I had experienced, but I also am grateful for the life experience that we've had,
I agree. And I think if I could put it into a simple sentence, is it makes you sort of a chameleon. You can
Yeah.
change your skin very quickly because you have to. But with that being said, I think that there are many advantages to establishing roots, to
Yes.
having
Agreed.
your grandmother around the corner. And so that's the life that I'm looking to build for my family here on both sides of the family, and want Emmy to have that level of permanence when she gets older. And that's the goal. So we'll see if it happens. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it's harder for our family because there are so many of us and we're all spread out. Like, our other brother, Benzie, lives here in Delaware. Our sister, Tessa, lives in New York City. And then our youngest sister also lives in Atlanta. So we're in all, and she's still so young, and she could, she's probably going to go somewhere else when she graduates college, and
Maybe not.
who knows, like, where everybody is going to end up. But like, I do like the fact that there is one home base that we can go to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know it if I'm going to end up in Atlanta, because it's not completely up to me. Like, I have a life partner who also has his goals in life, and that's just going to be the way it is for anybody. But I do like the fact that there is a home base.
I do need to talk to him about the beautiful Lake Lanier. And I played golf at the Legacy golf course at Lake Lanier. That's not the name of it. I can't remember the name, but it was a wonderful, wonderful 18-hole course on the water.
Saw it. I actually saw it. It is beautiful. It is
And
beautiful.
there's some really big boats there. Like, there's some 40-foot boats, and it's a big, big lake. It would take you a long time to explore it. Anyway, I'm just saying words, right? There are bodies of water here, even if it's not an ocean.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. How are we going to wrap this up, Noah?
Okay. So let's decide on the next theme of the week. I think since yesterday was the first day of fall, we could talk about the fall or something less generic.
I like when we get deeper, though. Like I feel like that's what a lot of people like, is these deeper conversations. I feel like people really want to get to know people on a deeper level.
How about adulting?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about that, because you have a little bit more experience in the 30s and have a wife and a kid. So definitely want to delve into that a little bit more.
Okay, let's do it. So that's set for next week.
Alrighty.
Next week's theme. Thank you, everybody out there, for your time.
Thank you, all of you.
All of you.
For listening.
We appreciate you. Please like and subscribe. We'll get the spiel down.
Yeah, follow us.
Hit that notification
We
bell.
need to make an Instagram and a Facebook page, or maybe at least just an Instagram to start. An Instagram for our podcast.
The first thing we need to do is figure out the best way to post this video and, have a nice thumbnail. But we'll
hopefully soon, so that it's relevant still.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.